It's Thursday, it's 3 p.m., and that means a little Nessie happy hour with Ron and Dave. Happy Thursday to you all out there, and welcome to our show. Ron and I are going to be chatting for about an hour or so, and boy, oh boy, do we have some fun topics today. There might be some drunk deer in there somewhere. There might be some reality TV stars in there somewhere, and then sprinkled in a whole bunch of financial talk, housing talk, mortgage talk. But we've got a fun show for you today. But before we get to it, Ron, happy Thursday. Cheers to you, sir.
Cheers. Cheers to you and McKenna.
Ron, you are back at your house. Congratulations.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Hopefully I get to stay for a while.
I'll believe it when I see it. But yeah, you've been on the road quite a little bit. Where you been?
I've been everywhere. I've been a lot of places. I just got back from Canada and Alaska. It was great seeing my brother-in-law. Good time in Anchorage. Good visiting some market centers up there in Anchorage. It was great.
You're very intentional with trying to go to as many mortgage-related conferences as possible, and you were supposed to go to Housing Wires. Which one was it that you had to miss?
I missed the
AI
gathering.
Summit. No, the gathering. No, that's right. I think AI Summit is coming up. But you missed the gathering, unfortunately. But you're always on the road trying to educate yourself and mingle with mortgage folk. I've tried to steer clear as much as I can from those things over the years. Always just too busy to feel like it was worth my time. But I'm gonna get out there one day and start attending some of Housing Wires events.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it with you together. You're great at them. Yeah, my schedule's been so packed that I've been going, doing crazy things like flying from Orlando back to Scottsdale, staying for 6 hours, and flying to Washington, D.C., flying from Washington, D.C. back to Scottsdale for 20 hours, then flying down to Mexico. The thing with the gathering, I was supposed to fly from Mexico to Scottsdale, only being for 6 hours, then fly to Austin for the gathering. But my plane from Mexico, the flight was canceled due to maintenance problems, and I couldn't rebook in time to get to the gathering the way that would work, and so I just had to suffer and stay in Mexico a couple extra days.
You tough situation for you there, Ron. I pity you.
I'm glad to be home.
Let's get to our topics. We've got a from the gut, then 3 main topics, and then we've got a few rapid fire. So the from the gut section, which we usually kick it off with, it's a 6 to 10 minute little monologue that I give, and it's usually what's trending, what's popular, what's in the news, and I'll usually tie it into some kind of marketing branding lesson. And as you can see this week, if you don't know who Spencer Pratt is, you will know in just a second. So that's the topic of my From the Gut, and there is a tie-in to marketing and branding. So looking forward to that. And then our 3 main topics, Ron usually takes the lead on. I sit back and twiddle my thumbs and usually just end up asking him a bunch of clarifying questions. So what's the first one we're talking about, Ron?
We're going to talk about more financial tools in ChatGPT and the impact it might have on mortgage professionals.
And then
we're going to talk about some of the technical advances that UWM is making and how that will ripple across the marketplace.
And finally, our last of our 3 main topics,
we're going to revisit my favorite economist, Dr. Torsten Slok, his continued argument on why there's upward pressure on interest rates, and it's just not the Iran conflict. So we'll talk about his 4 premises. We might add a couple of our own.
And then we'll move on to a handful of rapid fire topics. But Ron, I swear, we did a spoof sponsored ad a couple of weeks ago or so, but we actually, at some point when we actually start selling some products that Ron and I have been working on, we're gonna continue our podcast, and we're gonna be very intentional with it. Right now, we've been doing it for a while, really just kind of out of habit to get used to it, to get McKenna used to producing. But we're gonna actually make a go of this in a serious fashion in the future. And I think the first person that we should reach out to for sponsorships should be probably Dr. Slok. You talk about him that much.
That or Wolf Richter, maybe Ben Carlson. I mean, Wolf Richter,
Right.
I'd probably quote. Matter of fact, we're
Yeah.
covering two of Wolf's pieces today.
There you go. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's get into this week's From the Gut. Alrighty, so this week, gosh, I never know where I'm going, usually until about 2 days or sometimes a day before, we go live. And it's always different. But this week, I want to talk about none other than Spencer Pratt. And if you've been hiding under a rock, Spencer Pratt, he's running for mayor in Los Angeles. And honestly, if you would have told me 15, 20 years ago that, or maybe 10 years ago, based off when the show started. No, 10 to 15 is right. Doesn't matter. If you told me that a long time ago, I probably, and he would have been in this position now, most people, myself included, probably would just laugh at you. Because if you remember him at all, it was probably from a reality TV show called The Hills. It first aired in 2006. That was the same year that the first Housewives reality show came out, The Housewives of Orange County. And 1 year before Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and just 3 years before Jersey Shore. And they all fall into the same genre, just reality TV, drama, tabloid culture. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that I can say that I've never watched a single episode of any of them. I've seen clips, I've been aware, I pay attention, but never watched a full episode of any of those. But back to Spencer Pratt. He was in the show The Hills back in 2006. He was kind of portrayed as the villain. I do remember that as much. Did a little bit of preparation, but he and his girlfriend Heidi were a big part of the show. They married a couple years into it, and they became famous during that whole era where reality television exploded, and celebrity culture became this just kind of weird nonstop machine. And for a long time, a lot of people rolled their eyes at him, and probably still are, maybe. He became one of those people that was famous for being famous. I think probably before that term was coined. But now, somehow, Spencer Pratt is running for mayor of LA. And a lot of people say that politics has just become a joke. But that's not really the point I'm making. What interests me is how someone like Spencer Pratt even becomes a real conversation in the first place, because whether people like him or not, people know him. He's visible, or has been in the past, back in the day, and visibility matters more than, more than people want to admit, especially today. Now, there's a lot of AI videos surrounding his campaign. Not all of them are made by his team. I think some of them are. Gosh, excuse me. A lot of them are fan made, which honestly, it makes this even more interesting, because it means he's becoming culturally sticky. People are participating in the story, his story. They're creating content around him. And when that starts happening, momentum builds. And that's where I think things get interesting beyond politics, because Spencer Pratt's rise wasn't really built on the modern influencer we think about today. He became famous before TikTok or before Reels, and before creators built entire careers from short form content. But what he did understand early was attention, how to be visible, how to stay in the conversation, and how to create reactions. And for years, people mocked that. But now we live in a world where visibility has become one of the most valuable currencies there is. My cat's yelling at the door. And LA is a fascinating backdrop for this conversation, because historically, LA has overwhelmingly leaned Democrat politically. But over the last several years, a lot of people, regardless of political party, have also watched the city struggle with homelessness and crime and drug problems, cost of living, and whether those issues are fair to pin on one party or not, people clearly feel frustrated, which creates something really important here, an opening. Because when people feel like the current system isn't working, they become much more willing to listen to someone different. And Spencer Pratt is definitely different. Now, does that mean he should be mayor? I'm not even making that argument. This isn't a political speech. That's not what it's about. What I think is interesting is that he represents something bigger happening culturally. People are becoming more willing to bet on someone visible or recognizable and unconventional than someone necessarily polished and traditional. And honestly, we see versions of this everywhere now in business, in branding, and social media. People used to think if I'm really talented, eventually people will notice. And sometimes that's true, but visibility changes things. The person who's consistently seen, consistently heard, and consistently talked about often has an advantage over the person quietly sitting in the background, even if that quieter person is technically more qualified. And that's I think that's what makes a lot of people uncomfortable because we want to be the best product always wins mentality, and the smartest person wins or the most qualified person wins. But history shows over and over that visibility matters, story matters, and recognition matters. That doesn't mean that substance doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But eventually, substance has to back things up. And substance without visibility often gets ignored. And visibility without substance can still create a momentum for a surprisingly long time. That's why this whole thing feels just kind of fascinating to me. And here's the lesson, especially if you're a loan officer or a real estate agent. Number one, you don't need to become Spencer Pratt. You don't need to become political. You don't need to be controversial, but you do need to stop assuming that being good at what you do is enough by itself. Because if nobody sees it, nobody experiences it, and nobody hears from you consistently, then the market can and won't reward it. And I think a lot of talented people hide behind, I don't want attention, when really they just don't want to feel uncomfortable being visible. And those two things are different because visibility doesn't always mean ego. Sometimes it just means letting people know you exist. There's my thoughts, Ron. That's my from the gut for this week.
I appreciate it, David. I'll tell you the thing about Pratt. And here's the thing about um, reality TV people. They innately know what resonates with their audience. I mean, think of
Mm,
Donald Trump as the same thing. He has this unique
right.
insights that what's going to play. And by the way, and they just keep throwing stuff until it hits. But his video where he's at the burn site in the Palisades, going, you know, here I am living in a tent, and the mayor is flying, all over the world, not paying attention to these problems, resonates with the basic person, and he seemed authentic. And the basic citizen would go, yeah, that guy feels my pain because obviously the mayor does it, and things like that. They understand what resonates, and they do a really good job, tapping into that.
And I think, I ended with, I realized yesterday, I was like, I need to tie in a deeper lesson into these from the guts, an actual kind of takeaway. And I think the takeaway, and this is true for people, maybe in their 50s or 60s or so, who have that hesitancy to post on social media, to be a content creator. And you don't have to be, you don't have to look at these people, gorgeous people, man or woman, and who look like a celebrity. You don't have to be that person, but you do need to be, or you don't need to be. I mean, if you don't like money or being successful in business, and you can do it without social media, absolutely great for you. But if you want to up your game, social media is one of the easiest way to do it. I mean, most people have 500 followers or 1,000 followers or whatever. Just if you're 65, you've never really built that presence. You've probably got at least a couple hundred people on your Facebook, but not all of them are your best friend. But if none of them know that you're a loan officer, because you never post anything about it, then you've just probably missed out on business. So it's a real simple, easy kind of lesson on it, but that's the main one.
Now, David, you do a phenomenal job with your own personal postings in social media.
Mm,
You don't post a lot, but when you post from the heart and you're
mm,
authentic and you're convicted and you bring a ton of energy and respect and you can be controversial without offending people.
yeah.
It's amazing the way you post because you lead with your heart, which is great, and then you share your thoughts and you challenge people, but in a pleasant way. You are a great example of how to be authentic in social media, and you're not doing it for a business purpose. You're just trying to get out in the world. You're expressing yourself, but it's a good case study for people to follow.
You would think that if you went to my Instagram or any of my social channels, you'd see tons of content, but kind of intentionally went dark about 9 months ago. Not fully dark, but I intentionally quit posting because, I started this business to be successful, and I kind of, maybe poorly planned it, and I got so busy so quickly. And that's how I got my business off the ground, is just by posting on social media and word of mouth. And I got to the point where I just couldn't take any more clients. And I literally had to go dark intentionally. And then it transformed into you and I partnering together, Ron. And we've been building some products behind the scenes. And so once we're ready to start selling, you better believe I'm going to go live, not live, but get way more active on social media. But I'll still kind of take the approach that you just kind of outlined. Because yes, I don't just post whatever, but I also don't overthink it either, which a lot of people get into that trap.
Yeah, you definitely
So,
don't over curate, which makes it authentic. And then when we get to our second main topic today, remind me to tie in to what you just said, uh, which is you know learning the technology. Being a non-technologist, stepping into a technology world. But let's table that. But great job on
all
the
right.
from the gut, David. I enjoyed it as always.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on to our first topic, where we are talking about consumers top advisor.
Yeah, and David, I don't want to overstate this or complicate it. There's a bigger point here, but let me frame it. Uh, Plaid just partnered with ChatGPT, so ChatGPT now is rolling out Plaid as a as a secondary point. They're also going to be partnering with Intuit, and they're bringing a whole bunch of more advanced financial tools to their consumer. Now, keep in mind something like 200 million ChatGPT users confide or use ChatGPT for financial purposes a month. 200 million for whether it's budgeting or financial questions or whatever that might be. And nearly over half of Americans go, it would kind of be ridiculous to do budgeting or financial planning and not use an AI tool. So just tells you how, ubiquitous this is now. And so with them partnering with Plaid, and the reason why the Plaid caught my attention is because a lot of different mortgage technologies use Plaid. Or put differently, our consumer is every day getting a hold of the same tools that we use, and they're getting a hold of them in ways that are very user friendly through engines like ChatGPT. To tell you how the word ubiquitous, Plaid is. FICO just signed a contract with them to help them in their new credit model, and of course we have it embedded in probably half the technology we use, and so it's one of the tools that we have. But the bigger point is, as the same tools that we have become available to our customers, and as they get better and better information and curated knowledge, we have to keep making sure that we're pivoting and maneuvering to what's most important. I was talking to a loan officer. Matter of fact, I was talking to a loan officer in Anchorage a couple of days ago, and I was saying that, and he was asking me that, he's a veteran loan officer, and he's kind of asking me, not where the puck is going, but what's changing so much. And I said, look, a lot of loan officers today don't understand the product's changed. The product used to be mortgages. The product used to be, the submission process, the approval process, the delivery of the mortgage. Today, that's not the product, because that product can be done by a machine probably better than by me. The product now is the customer journey, the customer experience, the advice that you give the customer, the confidence, the certainty, the psychology of the transaction. That's the product. And so we've moved away from this very hard product to a very soft product, and we have to make that pivot. And that becomes more and more apparent as our customers get a hold of more of our tools. We just need to make sure that, okay, we're no longer the cake. The product isn't the mortgage. The product is the advice and the experience, right? The feeling. And so that we're the frosting. We just have to make sure that we keep frosting the right cake and making them sure that we're, calculating our value. David, what do you think about that?
It makes me think about just a point that leaders in the mortgage world have been making for years, or good loan officers. I've been at couple different companies that have had both retail and direct to consumer, and and there's conflict there. But if there's a retail loan officer that's kind of arguing their value, they'll quite often pitch the direct to consumer call center loan officer versus a local lender that like and trust, and you have face to face and you have interaction. And that's the argument that retail loan officers have used for a long time, right? Over call center, and it's relationship based and so on. But now with AI, that's making that 10x point even more significant, because anyone can now get a mortgage or do most of the work without a loan officer. And so I think that's more true now than it ever has been. But I think that point's been tried to kind of hammered home from retail loan officers, that it's a relationship based type business, but it's never been more true than it is today.
The other thing I would add, David, is that it's critical for loan officers and all participants, whether it's companies or individuals, that they adopt all these technologies and then they sit on top of it. You can't ignore it, because what happens, you start to provide a lesser, slower, more expensive service. So you have to figure out how to sit on top of it, understand what your customer is seeing, understand the access they have to it, and then understand how you add value on top of it. And what I think that sometimes we happen, we go to ostrich mode and we stick our head in the sand going, hey, that ChatGPT, that Gemini, that Claude is not going to replace me. Put my head in the sand. And then all of a sudden we're extinct. We have to super pay attention to it, and we have to actually practice the tools. We need to go into ChatGPT. We need to play with their new Plaid-driven tools, and we have to play with the Intuit tools. We have to figure out what it's telling our customers. We have to figure out how we can leverage the ChatGPT tool in our own journey with our customers, and then figure out how we add on top of it. Whether it's judging the hallucinations or the bad advice, or judging the client emotion, dealing with the human aspect of the transaction. That's where we're going to fit in, and we have to calibrate, of course, our fees to what the value is we're bringing to the transaction.
Right. We've got a couple slides. You want to look at those?
We can just go on. I think it's just showing what it looks like on a cell phone and on a screen. I think we're good. We can move on to the next
that's
topic.
right. That's right. All right.
Yeah.
So meet your competitors, and you wanted a reminder to tie it back into the from the gut.
I do want a reminder, and let's just go through this a little bit. I really like this topic, and we are so fortunate in the mortgage industry, because we have such great foundational companies, leaning into technology and really helping, the evolution in mortgages, whether it's Rocket or United Wholesale Mortgage, but even every company. I would say Guild's doing a great job, Cross Country, but Fairway has been really trying to step into technology and being a leader. I can keep going. I don't lead them. All these Loan Depot, all these companies are doing a great job stepping into technology, and they're really, I think, helping the industry. But so we've talked about Rocket before. Last week, I think we talked about, but now let's talk about United Wholesale Mortgage. And by the way, last week we had a kind of a negative view on, not negative, but a negative angle take on United Wholesale Mortgage. We certainly weren't being critical of them. We were talking about their accounting, practices. But this weekend we want to talk about their technology. And there's a few things here, David, that I came up with. First, right now, United Wholesale Mortgage has 2,000 technologists on staff, and they're working on 500 different projects, which is just a lot, as you know. That's a lot. I forget his name. Bresler is his last name, the CIO, CTO at UWM. He says he has the largest, essentially AI staff under one roof in America. in one
Oh,
building under one roof. Is that shocking? And he's very impressive, by the way.
wow.
But here a couple things here before we get on to that. So before you get that, and you can leave it on the screen though, McKenna, before you get that. So one of the things they're doing, David, it's very hard, especially I think they're in Detroit. There aren't a lot of great AI specialists in Detroit or technology people, and they have to compete for those folks. They have to pay huge wages. And so what they've done is half of their technology team comes from mortgage insiders. So it's underwriters, it's processors, it's loan officers, it's sales managers, and their strategy is that it's easier to teach a mortgage person technology than it is to teach a technology person mortgage. Isn't that fascinating? And so, David, that's part I'm linking to what you were talking about earlier. For us, we're mortgage people. You're a marketing person, right? And at UWM, they said it's easier to teach people like us the technology. That's what's been taking us time to learn to launch our products. It's not that we don't know what we're doing. It's like we're trying to figure out all the iterations of these different technologies. But that's easier than if we would have been technologists trying to create the product and marketing. What do you think about that before you go to the other things?
My first reaction would have been the exact opposite. That's
Really?
very surprising to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're succeeding. Now they're doing that they're taking a total different track than everyone else. No one else in the industry thinks that, but it's working. And so they're getting lower cost employees in these technology things. And they think they're getting a better outcome. And that's called their X program, by the way. Their X program is hiring mortgage professionals to be technologists. Really fascinating. So now,
But I wonder,
yeah.
I mean, how advanced are they training these people to become? Are they just training them to become efficient on the main AI tools, or are they training them to actually start building and building AI tools and working deep in it, as in AI builders?
No, they're AI builders. They're not just
Mm,
consultants. But what happens is that they have a pretty robust set of tools in the toolbox, and they teach them how to do it, and it's getting a lot easier to code. And these people
yeah,
are really, really contributing, which is great. And by
crazy.
the way, and as it says on the screen right here, one of the things that they have achieved is now underwriters at United Household Mortgage touch 16 loans per day, and the average in the industry is something like four. I mean, it's ridiculous, 3 or 4 a day, and they're at 16, and they're trying to get to 30 by the end of the year.
Wow.
Think of what an advantage that is if your underwriters are touching 30 loans a day versus four. Like,
Yeah.
holy smokes! Because underwriters are one of the more expensive lines from the hard labor cost versus a sales labor cost that there is on the P&L, and so that's really fascinating. But the thing that I want to really touch on, so that's just kind of a background. But what's more interesting are the three AI chatbots they've deployed that are completely changing the game. And the first one is Leo. And we all hate Leo. What Leo does is any loan officer, any broker, by the way, whether they're going to do the loan at United Household Mortgage or not, can submit a competitor's LE and go, hey, how do I beat this competitor, right? How do I beat this LE? And Leo will go, well, here's the errors. It's probably not the right program. Here's how you can do a better rate. Here's how you can cut fees. This is a way that you can meaningfully beat this competing LE, and it gets it to them within a couple of seconds, and they can immediately compete. And that is really helping them win. They have a higher conversion rate at United Household Mortgage than their competitors because of Leo, which is fascinating, I think. The second thing is Mia. Mia is essentially LOA, and it does anything an LOA can do. It does all the pre-processing. It does outbound phone calls. It takes inbound phone calls. It does scheduling, and it's super effective. And Mia is saving the average salesperson that deploys Mia something like 2 hours a day. It shaves off 2 hours a day off their administrative and scheduling task. And the other thing is, it wasn't in the article that we're referencing in this, but if I remember right, Mia is responsible for, I forget what it was. We talked about this a few weeks ago, David, independently generating something like, I don't remember what it was. It was something like 5,000 closed loans a month, or some crazy number of closed loans a month on its own. I don't have that off the top of my head. And so that's the second, AI agent working at United Household Mortgage. And so they have Leo and Mia, and the third one, the new one, is NORA, and NORA handles all the servicing calls. NORA is really increasing the customer satisfaction. They're doing a great job, right? But not only do you call in and you get NORA, But the thing too is that NORA can also act like Leo, and it tells the call center or the servicing center or the original loan officer how they can beat the LE, or how they can beat the loan from another company. And so here's the thing: one of the things in United Wholesale Mortgage, as a matter of fact, I can't remember whose Rocket is suing United Wholesale Mortgage right now, because United Wholesale Mortgage immediately attacked Rocket's book. And what they did is they took the existing, terms of the loan from public records and ran it through a Leo type, a bot. And then they figured out, hey, here's where we can beat this loan. And then they did automated, just absolutely poured on those customers about, hey, we can get you a lower rate today. We can do it no cost, and really hammered them. And it was just an AI bot hammering them, but it's been really eroding Rocket's book. They're really stealing clients. And they're doing this one day after close, like one day, like there's no like all oxen free. And so it's really interesting, the tools that, United Wholesale Mortgage. And here's what I would say, and this is kind of my point. And then David, I'll get your feedback. Look, this stuff's happening. You can't just stick your head in the sand. You got to figure out, what's going on. And no matter where your company is in their tech journey, you need to be on your own tech journey. You need to be leaning into it. You need to be figuring out how to use some of these tools. And we're going to talk about this, I think, our next topic, so I don't want to steal into it. But you got to be able to lean into technology, whether your company does or doesn't. David, what are your thoughts?
I'm just, the last 2 years, and especially the last 6 months, it's been a hot topic of how many people are going to be displaced because of AI, and I think it's exciting to see what you just showed, but it also, sadly, I think means there's going to be a lot of people displaced as this stuff starts to become not just a reality, but the prominent thing. And UWM is probably, are they kind of leading the charge with their AI efforts?
I
Whether it's
think
them or
Rocket.
someone else, yeah,
I think it
either
Rocket.
them or Rocket, I would think.
It's neck and neck. They're the leaders by far.
Yeah, but the next top 10 or the top 25 companies, or maybe even the top 50, aren't going to be that far behind either. And so, I think the the fears of many people with I think is they not only becoming true, they've already been true. I know that from my son's experience in coding. But yeah, that's the main thing I think of.
Yeah, and David, I'm gonna hold some of my comments because I see on our first rapid fire we have the great equalizer as AI, which is kind of where we're
Right.
leaning into. So all the topics, but I'll just respond to what you're saying. The people who don't use these technologies are going to become obsolete, and they're going to have an inferior product. It's going to be more expensive and slower. So you just have to figure out how to sit on the top of the technology and figure out what the service is, what's your actual product, and what service are you delivering. And it's as simple as that. And if you can figure that out, you'll stay relevant and you'll have a great career. If you don't, if you ignore it, you're going to become obsolete. It's just the way it is. And I know today's show, I have to say, I know it's David, we have 3 or 4 or 5 topics related to technology, and we're not, technology people, but that's just the way the world is going. And our goal is trying to make sense out of things that impacts mortgages or marketing or real estate. And right now, it's being dominated by all these tools, all this technology experiences.
Yeah. And Spencer Pratt as well.
And Spencer Pratt, that's right. I hope he wins. Actually, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna leave my opinions out of it, and I won't, and I still will, but you just gave yours, so there you go. Let's move on to our next topic. Higher
All
for
right.
total. Go for it, Ron.
Higher for longer. I love Torsten Slok. He has simply been the most accurate economist for the last several years. He's forecasted higher for longer for the longest time. He's been spot on interest rates. He's been spot on inflation. He's, of course, world renowned. He's quoted by other great economists. He's widely published, so he doesn't need me, being a fanboy. And he never responds to my, social media that I quote him on. But if you're,
Will be
I'm
our
a
first
firm believer.
sponsor.
I know you should be our first sponsor, but I'm a firm believer that if you're a loan officer or a real estate agent, that you should adopt an economist, and so that when you don't have to be the economist, just figure out the ones you like and adopt them, and then quote them to give you, to make you sound, legitimate, and so I would quote Dr. Torsten. The thing I'd really avoid is trying to follow, financial analysts or commentators inside our industry that have liberal arts degrees that are trying to tell you what the markets are going to do. They earn money by selling you product that aligns with that opinion and isn't necessarily well educated or well grounded in any type of fact, but certainly rooting for the good outcome. So Dorson Slock, he's been saying forever that there's upward pressure on interest rates. Now, David, I have been adopted Torsten Slock as my economist, and I have been amplifying what he's been saying. And for the last 2 years, I have been, out on my own here to saying that interest rates are going to stay higher for longer. Sometimes quite a bit of criticism, because I am a liberal arts major, and people are asking me, what the hell do I know? And it's a good challenge. But I just quote Dr. Salk. So he has 4 reasons why there's upward pressure on interest rates. And then I'm going to add a few others that he's contributed in the past. But the first one is that there's just a ton of inflation pressure from the energy prices, which we know. And the energy prices are going to be up longer than we think. Even if the conflict stopped tomorrow and the Strait of Hormuz open tomorrow, it's going to take about a year to get back to normalized energy. And so, and by the way, that's not even to speak of the whole demand of energy. Like we're probably going to be challenged to generate enough energy for all these data centers, and so we already have a supply and demand problem, right? And so he's saying, look, the energy prices are rising and they're not going to go down anytime soon. And it's not just the Middle East. The second thing he's saying, of course, government deficits are incredibly, they're in a conflict with supply and demand, right? And they're also inflationary. There's all sorts of problems here. They lower productivity, GDP, they're inflationary, and they increase supply, right? So they cause problems. And the increased supply, of course, then they need to raise rates in order to attract buyers, which certainly has happened in the market the last few bond auctions. They've had to really raise rates to attract buyers, which is not a good sign. The third thing, and this is really interesting, quantitative easing is fading. I don't know if we feel this, but as the government sells off their positions in MBSs or treasuries, what they're doing is they're once again adding supply to the market. That is also puts upward pressure on interest rates. And then the third here is because of just all the risk in the world and deglobalization and the political fragmentation, that's inflationary and raises risk, which means that when you have more risk, you have to reward risk with more yield. So all that stuff's happening. You could also argue the $1 trillion in corporate bonds being sold for all these data centers is in competition for supply. That's another problem out there. There's just a ton of upward pressure on inflation. There's just so much upward pressure. Food prices are not coming down. They're not going to come down. I think we're going to talk about food a little later, but all these things, this upward pressure isn't going away. And so we have to just accept that it's going to be higher for longer. Now, David, all is not lost. The thing is, if your whole business plan was, look, I succeed when interest rates are low, well, you're probably in the wrong business at this point. What you have to go as the reality is rates are going to stay where they're at. They might go up a quarter, they might go down a quarter, a few things that happen, but there are still millions and millions of Americans that need to buy a home. And those are the people you have to serve. And what's great is the consumer is starting to get used to interest rates where they're at. It was a shock when they went from 3% to 7%. And people are like, oh my gosh, recency bias, I'm not going to get a loan. But today we've had the interest rates where they're at for about 3 years, and consumers are getting used to it. And there's pent up demand to go buy. Now, there's, of course, this instability in geopolitics and war and all this stuff is leading them to have paralysis because they have fear. But also with AI, will take my job. Is my job secure? My income secure? It's giving them fear. That's a different issue. But there's still pent up demand for people that want to buy, and they're getting used to the interest rate, and homes are becoming more affordable every month, whether it's because interest rates are slightly trending down, or because home prices are trending down, or because wages are going up, right? Or affordability is slowly getting solved, which is a really positive thing. And so you have to just, your business plan can't be lower interest rates. Your business plan has to be, I'm going to go help people at the current rate environment that we're at. And if you do that, you can probably be pretty successful. Dan, what do you think about all this?
What is the, I should know this, but I think I've got a little bit of brain fog right now. The number of transactions going on a month to month basis versus like right before COVID. I think it's close to the same, right?
Yeah, so we're slightly down from 2019. If you look at
Slightly
the
down.
benchmark year, 2019, I don't remember what it was, but in 2019, and I'm gonna be directionally correct, but I might be. We did $4.4 trillion, I think. This year we're gonna do $4.2 trillion. It's something like that. I'll go back and check those
Yeah,
numbers. I'm sure McKenna, you can check me on that. I'm just going off the top of my head,
yeah.
but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
I wanted to
And so
say
you're right.
it was yeah, relatively close to the same. So I think it's just a matter of just taking your COVID goggles off or your previous 5 years goggles off and getting back to 2019, you know?
Well, and David, you bring up a really good point because we've talked about this. If you look at the survivors' benefits of coming through the pandemic and then the downturn, today there are far fewer loan officers, and actually, loan officers
Right.
are doing far more business per loan officer this year than they did in 2019. Matter of fact,
Right.
this would be the third best year for productivity per loan officer. Only second, first and second to the pandemic years were crazy years, and so this would be
Oh, wow.
deemed a good year if you didn't have the comparison to 2020 and 2021.
Right. Third best year that the other two are both COVID years, or you're
Yeah,
considering
the
that
other two are
one?
both COVID years. Yeah, for
Oh,
productivity per
okay.
loan officer for the industry, 100%.
Yeah. And you attribute that mostly to probably survivors benefits.
100%, because we've had such a, exodus from the industry. There's fewer loan officers serving, more buyers. That's great. And we also, by
Yeah.
the way, have higher, loan amounts, higher purchase prices.
Yeah. Are the numbers similar for real estate agents as they are for like percentage wise? Is
No,
it
real estate
no?
agents are hitting, historic lows on transactions per year. That's a
Sorry,
problem because
so I'm talking about the number of licensed real estate agents there are.
It's really interesting. Those are also, you think, they'd be easier numbers to get. There's 1.5 million, I think, licensed real estate agents. The question
Right.
becomes: are they realtors or licensed real estate agents? Are they practicing or not practicing?
Right.
So they're somewhere around 1.5 million, and that's
Mm,
slightly down, I think. Maybe 1.1 actually practicing real estate agents, or a million, something like that.
gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
All right.
We had two slides. You want to move on to our first rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, we had the best slide. That's
Let's
the
go.
best one, so we're good.
All right. And man, if you're watching right now, you definitely want to make it to our fourth rapid fire topic. These should be about 3 minutes each. McKenna, if we go over 3 minutes, just grab the hook or what was it, the cane and drag you off stage or whatever. Let us know. I'm wasting time. Let's go. Great equalizer.
Yeah, so this is based on a recent Gary Acosta. I don't know. We call it a video blog, or you call it a podcast. David, what would you call it?
Uh Probably neither.
All right,
Just a
neither. What would you call it then?
yeah. I don't know. Come back to me.
All right, so his weekly video. By the way, his new series of videos, which I think he's in the 80s now, he does one a week. They are phenomenal. They are really phenomenal. And he has a bent, of course, because he's a leader in NORA, to speak of it to Hispanics and Latinos. But everything he said is almost universal. And so this week, he talked about, or I should say last week, he talked about how AI is a great equalizer. And McKenna, do we have a visual on this?
Video blogger,
So
I would say, is
yeah, video
probably the
blogger.
best
Okay,
way I
so
would
this is
describe it.
this is what it looks like. So this is his one last week, and he said for the first time in U.S. history, Latino youth might just be competing on a level playing field. And McKenna, do we have any other visuals? I don't remember.
Mm,
Oh, we do.
pretty awesome.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second. And so he said today, young Latino boy or girl can sit at home on their computer and access the same AI tools that the richest, white kid has. And because of that, they can now achieve anything because they're on an equal playing field, essentially. And this person, this John Hope Bryant, he wrote a book, Capitalism for All. It was simply saying that technology is now the great equalizer, and it's giving everybody the same opportunities in America. If you step into those opportunities, if you leverage those tools, if you learn them, if you master them, you now have an equal playing field. And you got to just go back. Gary did a much better job than I'm doing explaining this. It was really a really good video. And but the thing I want to comment on, he's speaking to about Latinos, but I would speak that's for all of us. That's for a loan officer. That's for a independent mortgage bank. It doesn't matter your size. If you just start mastering some of these tools, and you can do it at a fraction of the cost. Today, you can create, all sorts of products. You can code. You can do things that used to take hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, you can do it with an inexpensive AI tool and maybe one or two people just sitting, at night, moonlighting, trying to figure it out. And that's a very encouraging thing. And this links back to our first couple topics, David. You got to lean into it, and you got to just experiment, and you got to try to create, value. You got to understand what your clients are seeing, where you fit in, how you can add on top of it. And you just got to go and you got to just play with it, practice. Don't be afraid of it, master it, learn it. It's almost like every day you got to dedicate an hour or two to learning some new aspect of technology, or else it's all going to pass you by. So I thought it was a great message. David, what do you think?
Just quick thoughts, but it's more of a maybe a philosophical reaction to it. But I watched the video and I was like, that's I was so encouraged by it. Uh, Bringing whether it be Latino or any other minority, leveling the playing field. But then I just as you were talking about it right there, a thought came to mind, and this is a fairly nuanced thought, um, but there's always been barriers to education and success and that kind of stuff, especially for minorities. But there's plenty of examples of people who have overcome that, right? And have dedicated themselves to whether it be their education or their profession or whatever it is. There's plenty of examples, but I think that's similar with the AI revolution as well. Even just because they have access to it doesn't mean that they are going to work at it no less than it would be if they were to work at their homework every night or whatever it is. It's still going to come from within, even though the tools available, because I think those tools have not always been available. But you know what I'm saying? There's still going to be something that has to come from within to make that person, whether they be Puerto Rican or whoever, Latino, or any minority, it still has to come from within. But again, a very nuanced kind of topic.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just encouraging. I encourage everybody to watch video. McKenna, I don't know if we could put a link to it someplace, but if we can, that would be great. And with that, let's stay on time. Let's go to our next topic.
Food prices.
Food prices are up, 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 up and away. And I think we have a chart here. This is cost of food at home. You can see it's up, 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 and up. It's up 32% in the last 5 years, and it is seeming to pick up. We know there's record prices right now for beef, record prices for coffee, everything. I mean, even like a dang soda. I don't drink soda, but we're having a get together here, and so I had to go buy soda, and it was like $6 a 12-pack. Like, what the heck? Flavored water. It's crazy how expensive soda is. It's everywhere. Everywhere food is more expensive. And by the way, the food costs for actually eating out, which more people we spend more money eating out than eating at home, is actually accelerating faster. And you
Really?
go, gosh, so this is now some of the things on food, they're not they're cost inputs, but some of them are also like the thing with beef. We're at the lowest head count for beef since the early 1950s. We just have a shortage of beef, and we're not going to fix that anytime soon. And people's appetite for beef is growing, right? And so we talked about, David, that analysts think that we're going to hit $10 average price of ground beef is going to be $10 a pound by the end of this quarter, which is kind of high, but they've been kind of right. It's already unbelievably 80% ground beef runs around $7-8 a pound right now, and that's not going to be fixed. That's a structural problem. A lot of this stuff is structural, but we'll see. But it's just one more evidence that upward pressure on inflation. But the other thing is, here's what's important. The number one psychological impact on voters The number one thing that affects boaters. I just read an article on this in Bloomberg today. You know what it is? The number one thing:
Gas prices?
gas prices.
Is it? That
Because
was
you
a
know,
guess.
it's gas prices. You see it, you feel it every day. You see how much beef costs. You see how much a loaf of bread costs. You see how much eggs cost. You see how much your coffee costs. You see it every day, and it erodes your psyche. That's why consumer confidence at all time lows, right? And the thing, if you're a mortgage professional or a real estate professional, that's a real thing. You have to address that with your customers because it's creating paralysis and fear and a lack of certainty and no confidence and the inability to move forward. And so you have to work through, okay, food's more expensive. Okay, everything's more expensive. But that doesn't mean you can't afford this house, or what choices you have to make to be able to afford that house. And you have to work through it with your clients. So this has to be part of your advisory service, and so you have to be aware of it. Anyway, thoughts, David?
I'm looking at that graph. Oh, note from McKenna from the producer. National average price of dozen grid 225. Increase of 53%. Hmm.
But it's much better than 2 years ago when we had the aviary flu and we got up to $12 for 12 eggs.
Right. McKenna, let's go back to that graph. Here's my thought, Ron. Obviously, during a pandemic, we understand that costs go up, right? But you would think that those costs would correct themselves over time. That's obviously not the case. But you would think that once all those barriers and restrictions and hardships go away, that the costs would correct themselves. Now, if the increase in these costs are going to, you know, uh, I, mm, middle America or whatever, then I think a lot of people would cheer because salaries are going up, and we know they are because you've talked about that, but probably not at the same ratio at what these costs are going up at. I think if people, and that's just inflation, but if these costs are continuing to rise, you would think that the financial picture for your average American should be rising at the same rate, but they're not, right? Or
Yeah,
are they?
David, I love this angle you're taking because what you're saying is inflation is relative, right?
Yeah. Right.
Because if your wages are rising faster than inflation, it really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
I can buy the same amount of products with the what my pay from 1 hour or 1 unit of labor, right? That's how it should be relative. What's my unit of labor to the cost of the products I'm buying? And if my unit of labor is paying me more than the increasing price of products, then I'm winning. But that's not
Right.
how consumers think, though, David. They think they get raises because they deserve them. They're brilliant. They're great. It was well deserved, and they see raising prices as somebody taxing them, or attacking them, or taking something away. They don't understand how their wages are riding inflation. Now, that being said, David, for the first quarter in I think 12 quarters, inflation now is rising faster than wages, which is a very bad sign. It is a
Yeah.
very, very bad sign. And I don't think that's going to reverse itself anytime soon, quite frankly. But that's not where we want to be at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that will definitely start to impact the psychology of the consumer.
Right. Second to last rapid fire. HELOCs.
Yeah, this could be a really quick one. Just a few things. It's interesting in the public companies, and like Rocket, quite a few public companies said that while purchase business is flat, first trustee business is flat. The opportunity to really fatten the P&L is with home equity lines of credit, and we're certainly seeing that. The statistics are, look, HELOCs are up about 4% month over month. They're up 10%, 11% year over year, and they're up 41% since 2021, which was the low mark. So they're up a lot, 41% in just 4 years. And the overall balance of the HELOCs is growing quite a bit. And so that's all good. So the thing here is, look, there's a huge app because we know we have the most we have the most equity in property in the history of the United States, right? And so we know that people want to start accessing that, and they're locked in on these low rates. So HELOCs are the solution. The only thing that I would just encourage people is that, and I love this, HELOCs are a relationship story. You know, equity gives you a reason to call your clients. Equity gives you a purpose to serve as a client, as a lender for life. It lets you act as a value resource. So calling your past clients, seeing if they have any needs, seeing if a HELOC satisfies them, is I think delivering on your fiduciary responsibility as well as your stated commitment to them. But it also, by the way, I tell people all the time, you may not get paid as much on a HELOC, but it's a check mark. It counts as a chicken scratch on the production board, and so you can really feather your business by really starting to push HELOC. So step into it. David, when I was a loan officer, I think in my highest volume year, I did more HELOC volume than I did in first trustee volume. I just became a master, and I had high net worth clients at really we use our equity strategically, but I did a ton of really high dollar HELOCs. I love them. It's time to really focus on them. And that being said, we still have the housing debt to income is at the third lowest it's ever been in history, only to some of the pandemic years. So even though we're taking a lot of equity, HELOCs are safe. Lean into them. Any thoughts on that, David?
No, just one question. In the last probably maybe 12, 24 months, what's been the number one or first and second top reasons for people taking out HELOCs?
Well, they have a ton of equity and they don't want to refinance their first because their first is at 2.5 or 3%. And one of the reasons what are they doing? They're doing renovations. They're doing everything you need to do, all the life events. But there's a
All the
lot of
stuff.
renovations. Matter of fact, last year was a record year for renovations. It was the National Association of Home Builders just actually published what number it was. It was something. It was extraordinary. It was 69 or $609 billion in renovations last year or something. I got to look it up. It was an extraordinary number. So renovations are the top.
You can take out a HELOC for really any reason, right?
Yeah, any reason.
McKenna, let's go. You haven't participated much this year or this show. What do you say
She's
we
waiting
take
for
out a
the
HELOC?
She's lying to wait.
What do you say we take out a HELOC and put in a pool in the backyard?
What is a HELOC?
If let's say you have $1 million house, but you only owe 500,000 on it, you can take out. So you've got 500,000 in equity, right? So you
Okay.
can take a line of credit out on your equity, right? Ron,
Absolutely.
Sure.
you better
Oftentimes
explain
it's
it for a non-mortgage person.
All right. So, McKenna, right now, the average equity in a home is about 50%, right? And so what's tappable equity is either calculated by up to 75% of your loan to value or 80% of your loan to value. There's something like $20 trillion in tappable equity in the United States. So let's say an example David gave you that your house is worth $1 million, you only know 500,000. You can typically do a HELOC for 250 or 300,000, and it's super simple. It's almost as simple as applying for a credit card. You get the response very fast, and it funds immediately, and then you get to use it however you want. It's just a line of credit. It's like a giant, credit card attached to your house. You just get $300,000. You can use it however you want. You can spend 1,000. You can pay back 1,000. You can spend 100,000. You pay back 100,000, and it's usually interest only for 10 years.
Right. And the interest rate isn't like what a credit card interest rate. It's similar to what your house interest rate might be, right?
So then
Yeah, it's
I would
slightly
be
higher.
paying double my mortgage, basically?
You know what? So today, if you get a mortgage, your mortgage rate's going to be around 6.5. If you get a HELOC, it's going to be around 8.5, 9. But it's interest only versus fully amortized. It doesn't go fully amortized for like 10 years. And so it's a pretty effective way to tap into your equity.
You didn't answer my question though. Should we put in a pool?
I say,
Yes.
kitchen.
No, you should do your little backyard oasis that you've had planned for a hot minute.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move on to drunken deer. What say you?
All right, so this is a great topic, and David, I'm going to link it back to somehow to mortgages. But I read this great article about.
We do have the video, by the way, Ron.
We have the video.
So just let us know when if you want to play it before or after.
I'll let you go in a minute. So France, issued an alert that for their citizens to be, be on guard against drunken deer, and it actually said drunken all sorts of animals. And I said, "What the heck are they talking about?" So yeah, let's show the video of the drunken deer. This would be great.
McKenna, we don't need to show the whole thing. Maybe 20 seconds or so. Ron, that's kind of what you look like on our cruise.
Right, I didn't
on the dance floor.
I'm just trying to get.
All right, McKenna, you can come.
So what happens is, and this is where it gets interesting, is that I guess that different berries and fruit fall off trees in the forest, and they somehow in the shade start to ferment, and animals walk along and they start eating them, and they get drunk, and then they act really weird, whacked out like that deer does, and they run in circles and they run in the street and they fall over, and pretty much like drunk people. So France issued this warning, and at first I'd never heard of it. David, had you heard of this happening?
No.
And so I go, well, what the heck are they talking about? And I did a little research, and I discovered what happens and everything. And you know what seemed like really goofy and didn't make any sense, it's like all things, once you figured out why the deers were drunk and why they're acting the way they did, meaning once you understood the conditions in their environment, their behavior started to make sense. So it made no sense just by the headline. It started to make complete sense once you understood those things. And what dawned on me is the same goes for the people we serve, the home, people trying to buy a home, first-time home buyers. The inputs from their environment that are causing all this fear, this anxiety, this paralysis, right? If we're not aware of those inputs, then their behavior seems irrational. But if we can try to understand the inputs, why they're acting irrationally, then we could possibly help them. Then we could possibly seek solutions, possibly see a way forward. And so that's the way I'm going to link drunk deers to, the mortgage industry.
A little bit of a stretch, but I like it. I like it.
I'm working with drunk deer.
You just wanted to show the drunk deer. That's all.
McKenna, what do you think about drunk deer?
I mean, I had never heard of that before either. The only thing that it made me think of, which has absolutely no relevance whatsoever, but it just made me think about chronic wasting disease, which is a horrifying thing that can happen in deer and cows and stuff like that make them go insane. So whenever you first started talking about it, I was like, that kind of looks like that, but...
You say product?
Did it make you want to go? Did it make you want to go to France and try? Did it make you want to go to France and try the fruit in the forest?
Absolutely not. I've had enough parasites in my life.
Oh, yeah. All right,
let's move on to our final. We've got our AI tip of the week. McKenna, run that bumper.
All right, so this is a really interesting topic. And you know what we're doing, David? We had 3 or 4 topics today where we're saying lean into AI, lean into AI, lean into AI. And companies like United Wholesale Mortgage, they know there's risk with using chatbots, and they're trying to build all the guardrails they can. But at some point, it's still going to go off the rails, and they're going to have some mass class action lawsuit and all sorts of compliance problems. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't do what they're doing, because if you're paralyzed because you're scared of all those things, you're going to be left behind and you're going to be obsolete, and your company's not going to be viable. Or if you're a loan officer, you're not going to be viable. So you're going to have to take reasonable risk, but you need to build in the best AI guardrails as possible. And so we came across a prompt on how to help you create guardrails for your AI. And McKenna, do we have those? Yeah, I'll look up the actual prompt thing, and maybe we'll put a link to the prompt. But you have to ask your AI tool, what is it? What can it see? What is it reading? And what can it change? And here's the thing. So what this is speaking to AI agents, as a matter of fact, we're going to talk about next week, but how Google just completely came out. They completely changed their Google search to be AI first, and we're going to talk about it next week, so we won't talk about it now. But they put embedded AI agents, and whether you're using it in Google search or Gemini, whatever it is, your AI agent now has access, can have access to what you're going to give it access to. Can have access to your bank accounts, can have access to your newsletters, to your whatever you want, your email, you can give it access. But you need to figure out what exactly does it have access to? What is it that it can actually independently do on its own, right? What information is it collecting and storing, and how do you actually delete or disconnect that information? And if we actually had a view, I thought I had my screen, if we actually had a view of the entire prompt, the prompt is really elegant. It gives a very specific kind of, you cut and paste this into your AI tool and ask it these things before you connect it. And that's what's really important. Before you give it access to your email or give it access to your bank account or give it access to whatever, you run this prompt through it and have it go through this test. And then that will kind of help you. Like it says here, it gives it permissions and restrictions, and it reports to you what your risks are. And I'm sorry you don't have the full prompt. We didn't put it up because it has way too many words on it. But McKenna, we might be able to put a link to that prompt too, or maybe a screenshot of it in our notes below. Dave, what do you think about that?
Couple thoughts, but if you want any of the links that Ron has talked about, McKenna's posted, they'll be on our YouTube page. So we posted one link to a video, I think. The comments on those, if you want the links, it'll be on our YouTube page. Anyway, my first thought is it reminds me of that story or topic we talked about last week, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't remember, where AI basically blackmailed, blackmailed, an employee based off what was in his email. So that it made me think about that. But I also just saw Ron and I have a history on Apple computers. I tried to convince Ron to move to Apple for a long time, and it was quite painful, and he gave up and moved back to non-Apple. But I did just see a clip from Google's presentation just within the last day or two or so, where they're bringing out a new native app for Google AI, Gemini, and so for Apple. And it's just changing every single day, and there's something new every day. Ron, I feel like we could highlight just not an AI tip of the week, but what's new in AI this week, because there's something that comes out every single week that could be talked about.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, David, I have the prompt in front of me. I'm just going to go ahead and go through it just so you guys know This is what you can do. It says, you are my AI permissions auditor. Before I connect this tool or account, create a permissions map. And it goes tool/account I'm considering connecting to, paste it in there. Data involved, say banking, email, calendar, files, CRM, or other. If not provided, look up the connector for me and find out. Give me 1, what the AI can read. 2, what the AI can change or trigger. 3, what data may be stored in the chat history, logs, or third-party systems. 4, what could go wrong in a normal workday. 5, the safest way to use it. 6, the exact steps I should take to disconnect or delete access later. Then finally it says, write this for a non-technical person, be specific and practical. Don't scare me away from using it. Show me how to be as safe as possible when using it. And David, I'll give you a practical example. We're trying to do automation, which means we have to link several systems together. And one of the things we kind of link through is Google Drive. And when I was originally connecting, I was doing a test on something. I was originally connecting ChatGPT to my Google Drive. I said, well, are you limited permission to just the folder that I am specifically mapping it to, or can you cruise across my entire drive? And ChatGPT said, honestly, you can try to restrict the permission, but frankly, I can surf through your entire, Google Drive. And then I said, well, what do we do? And it said, just create a new Google Drive just for this one cause. Don't put all your other stuff on it. But that's the way of you're discussing it with your AI tool. What are the risks? What's the likelihood? What's the chance that you're going to, go over the guide rails and ignore the rules? And how do I protect myself? David, like you talked about with Apple, Apple right now with Claude right now, and the coding with the Lobster Claw or Open Claw or whatever, what they do is you use multiple mini Macs, but you have each one doing a different thing, and they don't get to collaborate together that way. And only one has access to outside. so they can't just go off the guardrails. You really protect those machines from going, bananas. And you can easily just ask the tool. And one of the things I would recommend, if you're going to use, say, Gemini to connect to all your things, don't just ask Gemini what the risks are or how to protect yourself. Ask ChatGPT, because AI tools naturally don't like the other AI tool. And so it's like they like tattletelling, so if you go, hey, Chat, I'm thinking about giving Gemini access to my bank account, Chat's going to go, oh my God, Chat, oh, you're so unreliable, so bad, right? Where if I ask Chat or if I ask Gemini about giving access to the bank accounts, because that's a great move, Ron, let's do it. And so ask a competing AI tool about the security guardrails for a different AI tool is what I'd recommend. Ron's tip of the week right there.
There you go. Alrighty. Well, I think we've been talking for our usual time. We usually try to make it an hour, but we always seem to go about closer to an hour 10. But hey, if you've joined us this week, I hope you enjoyed the Drunken Deer and Spencer Pratt and UWM and all this stuff we talked about. We'll be back next Thursday. But Ron, we'll end with a cheers as we usually do. So cheers to you, sir, with my little Nessie Yeti.
My Miami Marlins. I'm a fan of the Marlins. Go Marlins.
There you go. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.